Hello. It's your girl Karaleise. What's going on? Today we're going to talk about definition of done. Yes, definition of done is very important. If you're a business analyst, if you're a product owner, if you're a product manager, if you're a project manager, you need to know about definition of done. If you're a scrum master, for sure. So all of these roles is going to be important to understand. When are you done? What are the things that you all can agree to as a team that every story has to have to be done so you can be successful? You need to know what those are. You need to agree on it as a team. So we're going to talk about that. I did a video already called Definition of Ready. I encourage you to go watch that one, because there I give examples of what a definition of ready is and some examples from companies as to what they define a story to be ready as, what are the things you should think about and avoid, right? So definitely go check that video out so you can have both that video and this one. So you have a definition of done and you have definition of ready. And now you're really ready for your user stories in Agile. We're going to talk a lot about definition of done. I'm going to give you examples. But before I get into that, I want to give a word from our sponsors today. And here it is. So I want to talk to you about our sponsors today, LearnSQL.com. If you want to learn or practice SQL, check out LearnSQL.com. They have a set of over 50 hands-on SQL courses. This unique platform offers a 100% online experience. No need to install anything on your device. Everything happens through your favorite web browser. All LearnSQL.com courses are interactive and are based on real-life business scenarios, right? Meaning you'll be writing SQL queries and seeing the results instantly. Do you want to become a data analyst or encourage your company to be more data-driven? LearnSQL.com is the place to go, or a business analyst in our case, right? LearnSQL.com is the place to go. You'll find a link to LearnSQL.com in the description below for you to check out their offer and choose one of their learning paths in SQL, PostgreSQL, T-SQL. With SQL.com, learning SQL has never been easier. So go check them out. It's in the description below. Go find out how to learn this on LearnSQL.com. And of course, you'll be supporting our channel because they're sponsoring this video. Speaking of which, let's get back to the video. So what is definition of done? As the name suggests, right? It's how you define done. It is the agreed upon set of items that the story has to get completed for you to agree that the story is done. Right? So you have this checklist of things that need to happen in order for you to say that this story is done. And every team comes up with their own list. It depends on the industry, depends on the particular project, depends on what's important to you guys. So there is no one size fits all. Everybody's coming up with their own list. And I'm going to share with you some of those examples in a minute. But it's just, what do you have to make sure happens to make sure the story is done? When I did the video on definition of ready, we talked about what are the things that has to be in the story for it to be ready to be worked on. And we talked about examples like you had it refined, you have all the API calls, you had the design in there, you discussed it with the team, things like that, to make sure that you've teased out all of the requirements and you've documented it properly. It's in the right user story format. All of those things would constitute definition of ready. And of course, there's more in that video. You can go check it out, like I said. But definition of done is similar. It's very similar. It means what are all the things that need to happen. It's not just finishing the code. That one is obvious, right? Obviously, you have to implement it. So when it's implemented, it's done. Maybe not. Maybe there's a step where the product owner has to review it, approve it. There's other things that you want to get done so that when you really mark this as done, it's passed through all of those steps, and there's very little likelihood that you have to reopen the story or create a new story to fix something in that story. You don't want to have this mess where things that you thought were done were actually not done, right? Obviously, it has to be implemented. Obviously, it has to be QA tested. But what else could constitute definition of done? I'm going to read for you an example from a company I used to work with, how we had defined our definition of done. And again, this was a process. It wasn't somebody saying, you know what, we need to have this and this and this and this and check and check and check and you're done. No, the team comes together. This is a team effort. You need to come up with maybe the few steps that you think we should have, discuss it with the team, clarify with the team, make sure the team can actually do it, and everybody gives their input. That's how you come up with definition of done. You don't want it to be a hierarchical dictator thing where you just pass things down. In Agile, we don't work that way. We don't work with, oh, you're the boss, so this is what you say, we have to do what you say. That's not how we work. We are one Scrum team, if you're doing Scrum. One Scrum team that together solves the problems within the team. This is why Agile is so efficient, because we get rid of this hierarchical, one person decides and everybody else follows thing. We don't do that. Okay? So if your organization says they're Agile and they're still having a kind of, there's obviously going to be some need for a senior person and a person, who is probably a little less senior, and decisions can be made from the top at some point, passed down. But within the team, within the Scrum team, we're all working together to solve the problem together. And we don't see ourselves as anybody's role more important than the other person's role. And because we're all on this flat level, it just works. It works better. It does. So here's some examples of some of the things that I have had in my definition of done. So you can use this as an example for you to go create your own definition of done. So the first thing, the code is peer reviewed, right? So you don't even want to finish implementing until somebody has reviewed the code. Make sure you haven't put anything in there that's not good, right? Make sure you're sticking with the standards that you came up with, right? So each person reviews somebody else's code, or maybe you have a lead developer and that's the one that always goes through the PR review, things like that. So you make sure the code is peer reviewed is one of the steps that we came up with for our definition of done. The next step we had was that unit tests are written and passing before QA deployment. So we had a step where we made sure that the developers themselves did the unit testing before they even gave it to QA. So they would test within their environment, and then they would deploy the code to a test environment where the QA would pick it up. But they needed to unit test it first, so you don't end up sending a bunch of bugs to QA, right? That way your code comes out cleaner. That way you have less bugs, in your name. It's just a better way. And we found that adding this to our definition of done was very helpful to get quality code out to the door. The next thing we had was story is tested against acceptance criteria and it passes. So when it gets to QA, we have said that I, as a BA, would be responsible for making sure the acceptance criteria is accurate. So in some cases, we had very intricate, detailed systems, right? And there was calculations and there was data being mapped to different fields. And there's a whole bunch of stuff going on. API calls and embedded software and third-party software and every complication you can think of. Those are the kinds of projects I work on. So we typically have like attached Excel sheets with long lists of data fields and where they map to in the system, all these different things, calculations and formulas and all this stuff. But I took the responsibility that I'm going to sort all of that out so that when you get the user story, it is accurate and you can trust that the AC is correct. The things that I will attach will be complementary, right? And maybe you need them to see the detail, but the truth or the source of truth was the actual acceptance criteria. And so it was my responsibility, and I took that on to say, if it's not in the AC, you don't have to build it, right? Because what was happening was there were so many different places that the developers were looking to try to figure out what to build that they sometimes built the wrong thing because the ACs didn't match what was attached. This Excel sheet has this data, but the AC doesn't have it. It's telling them to do this over here, but something else over here in the design. The AC didn't match the design. Like before I joined, there was a lot of things that was not right. And when I joined, I said, okay, this is how we're doing it. And this is the promise I can make to you that it is my job to make sure it's correct. And I'm going to make sure it's in the AC. And then the only place you have to look is in the AC, right? In the acceptance criteria. So when you get to testing, part of our definition of done was that the acceptance criteria matches right? And so they didn't have to be looking at the AC, then look at the attached Excel, then look at the design, and then try to figure out what I'm trying to say. It's only in the AC. Look at one place, one source of truth. And if it's not there, then it's a bug. Okay? So a part of the definition of done is that the story is tested against the acceptance criteria and it passes. So whatever is in the acceptance criteria is matching what the testers are going to uncover. Then there is build has no errors. That's a part of the definition of done, because sometimes when you build it, there comes an error and there's all this stuff. You don't want any of your builds to have any errors. You have to go fix those errors before you can call this story done. Integration test is completed. Again, like I said, not all of these things will apply to every project. It's just that I work on very, very complicated stuff, right? So integration, we had a lot of integrations going on, and we had to test to make sure that all of these different third parties that were integrated with us, that they were tested as well with the new thing that we're building, and they match, right? They're completed and they didn't have any errors. Code is deployed to the QA environment was the other one. You're not just testing in this particular environment, right? It has to be deployed to the QA environment, which is different from your test environment, which was different from your staging, which was different from, we had a couple of environments that you could look at. We wanted to make sure that it was in the test environment because that's where we had all the integrations, that's where we had all the users with the right accesses and all the different things for the testers to test from. We didn't want them to do something in like a dev environment and it passes there, but when you put it in the test environment, it wouldn't, right? So we make sure when you test over here in dev and staging or wherever you were, that you deploy the code to our test environment that's dedicated for the QA, and that is where they do their testing. That was a part of our definition of done. Now, if you don't have those multiple environments, just have a QA and a dev, then you're good. Just make sure it goes to QA, that's it. All right, other one that we had in our definition of done was QA completes tests without blocked critical issues. So if you're testing and there's, an issue over here, and some people say, oh, well, we'll come back and test it later. Let's just mark it done and come back to it, or something like that. That's not going to fly. That is not going to fly. When you mark something as done, it should be done. So you can't have a story that just to make it fit into the sprint, you mark it as done, but you're going to come back and reopen it because you had a blockage or a critical issue. No, that's not how we do it. We also had a step for the definition of done that said the PO needs to accept the story or approve the story. So in our case, we had external client. We're building for an external client, and on that client side, they had a product owner. So when we deliver the code, that product owner would need to look at it and approve it before we actually even demo it to them, right? They had to see it and confirm that, the code was correct and everything was on the up and up before we even could say that this thing was done. The next thing we had as a definition of done was the relevant documentation is updated. So yes, so a lot of people think that once you get a QA tested, you're done. That might work for you, but in some organizations, they want the documentation to follow right along. They don't want to wait until the end of the project to document the whole thing. The work that you did in each story needs to feed into that documentation, right? So that's how ours was, that I had to document. Mainly I did it in Confluence, so it wasn't that bad because I could pull the story in from Jira and it was kind of seamless. But you need to get the documentation done before the story could be marked as done. It was that rigorous. And the last thing we had for definition of done in our case was automation regression test cases are identified. So we had a very robust regression testing, and it means that you can, as you build new things, you don't want to break old things, right? So we had this automated test running to make sure the existing things still worked, right? And so we had to make sure that those test cases were identified so the QA can keep running those regression tests. So that was our definition of done. All right, guys, so there you have it. There you have it. All this talk about definition of done in this video. One more thing before I go, guys, remember to subscribe to this video, like the video, share the video. I also want to talk to you real quick about my dog Jackson. So my dog has turned orange. Oh, we colored him orange because it's Halloween, it's fall. You know, the leaves are changing to orange and red and so on. So we colored him orange. And my friends are always asking, is it going to be harming the dog? Because, you know, in June we had him in blue. And he has white and brown hair, so it's very easy to color him. But no, it's not harmful to him at all. It's very vet approved. He's not using human hair color, right? He's using vet approved dog hair dye, which is almost like a food coloring. So it wears off after a while. And so we have him in orange right now, and he's running around playing with my daughter outside. He looks so much like a little pumpkin. As a matter of fact, he's going to be a pumpkin for Halloween, right? So we just thought we'd color him. My daughter is calling him Cheeto Puff because he looks like a big Cheeto Puff. So they're having a blast. I'm having a blast. This is awesome. And I want to just share that with you to give you some comedic relief. But yeah, so thank you guys for watching this video. Please, again, subscribe. And look, there's a thank you button. If you like the content so far, click the thank you button and, you know, throw some thanks over there. All right. And check out my website, karaleise.com. I have some new templates over there. So I have some free templates, and I also have some premium templates where you can go and get for your presentation, especially those of you doing interview presentation. You want to knock them out the park. You want to impress your audience. So go check out those templates and look at the quality of the presentation. You have them in different file types, not just PowerPoint, but also Google Slide, Keynote, Adobe Illustrator, so that whatever platform, whatever tool you use, you can have your presentation in that tool. All right. So that's it for now, guys, and I will see y'all next time. Take care. Bye-bye.